Well, hello everybody. Thanks for being here tonight. Welcome to this year's Branding Your Scholarship Portfolio presentation. This event is presented by the University of Calgary's Chancellors and Ambassadors Club with collaboration with future students. So my name is Jason. It's very nice to meet you all. I'll be one of your speakers for tonight, and I'm joined today by Nikhil and Allison, who will also be speaking on a few topics. And big thank you to future students as well as Stephanie for coordinating this whole event. So yeah, as I mentioned earlier, I'll just kind of give like a really quick, brief introduction, but we are part of a club called the University of Calgary Ambassadors Club. Primarily, we are formed of students with tons of diverse experiences, and we come from all walks of life. Some of us even from outside of Calgary as well. So we're definitely here tonight to answer your questions. We may be able to address them in different ways depending on the person. So don't feel shy to ask any questions, and we'll get to you as soon as we can. Also, one thing I want to mention is that everybody here is going to be entered into a draw for a raffle prize, and this will be drawn at the end of the presentation. The winners will be emailed after the event to claim your prize. So just make sure to stay the whole time.
Okay, so here we're just gonna quickly go over the land acknowledgements. Um, so we are currently in the traditional territories of the people of the Treaty 7 region, Southern Alberta. That includes the Blackfoot Confederacy, comprising of the Sissega, the Beekani, the Guani First Nations, the Sudinata First Nations, and the Stoney Nakoda, including the Chickadee, Bearspaw, and Wesley First Nations. The city of Calgary is also home to the Métis Nation of Alberta, Region 3. I would also like to note that the University of Calgary is situated on land adjacent to where the Bow River meets the Elbow River, and that the traditional name of this place is the Mohkinstsi, which we now call the city of Calgary.
Hi everyone, my name is Nikhil. I'm also one of your presenters today, and it's a privilege to be here tonight. So yeah, for our presentation today, we have a general outline planned. We'll be covering general tips for building a university and scholarship portfolio that is competitive, then move on to our personal scholar portfolios, just so you have an idea of what to base it off of. And then furthermore, ideas for involvement if you want to pursue activities later on or initiatives that you like to start, as well as a final Q&A session with the Chancellor Scholars so you have a chance to ask any questions. Okay, so first we'll begin with general tips and advice for building a strong scholarship portfolio. So the first tip is to do what you're genuinely passionate about, and as cliche as it sounds, it's genuinely true. You can have a plethora of activities, but unless you have an actual motivation and reason for pursuing the activity or starting the activity, it's not going to be impactful. So you really want to reflect on what do you actually enjoy doing? What activities do you enjoy pursuing? Where does that motivation sprout from? And can you effectively speak about why you actively are involved in that project or activity? And some things to consider when you're reflecting on this are one, how does this activity make an impact on others? And then the second question is, why do you personally want to pursue that activity or goal? Do you have a personal goal that you want to get out of it? Or is there a specific group you want to help from this activity? These kinds of things are very important to reflect on because when you're writing your scholarship essays or university applications, a lot of the times they care more about that impact factor than specifically a number of activities you've done. And they'd like to see what you've learned from it, what you've actually done from it, and in the future, what you hope to accomplish. Okay, and now the second tip. Oh, yeah. The second tip is regards to similar, it's building on the past tip. It's about demonstrating commitment to your activities by showing quality over quantity. So you may have heard this before, but it's often better to show strong commitment within a few projects or activities you're working on rather than expanding your range to a wide um, wide range of activities, as As I mentioned before, they care about the impact that you're trying to convey with the activities. And some of the things that you can use to reflect on your experience while participating in these activities to demonstrate that impact are things like what have you learned? What are the skills you have developed, whether that be personal skills or um, skills working with others? And how have you influenced others? Did you empower anyone? Did you inspire anyone to pursue something else? Things like these are very useful for helping to reflect on your experience and showing that impact. And another point is that you only have so much time, so you don't want to spread yourself too thin and, participate in a wide range of activities, but only superficially that you don't have enough impact on each of those activities. And this is another reason why focusing your attention on a very few select number of activities can be very beneficial. And in addition, it can negatively impact your grades, mental health, and well-being if you decide to participate in too many activities that aren't always going to be beneficial.
Okay, so for the third tip here, it's about creating a compelling story. So when you are trying to share your story and what's significant to you and building your portfolio, think about what's important to you, what stands out to you. And it's similar to those other points we were just talking about, into doing what makes what's passionate, what you're interested in, what really moves you. Because when something moves you and you have real passion for it, that's what moves the people who are reading your portfolios, who are reading your applications, who are reading your essays, because they connect with what story you're trying to push and they can feel for your heart and the change you have behind, the desire for change you have and input in the world. So, personal statements and hooks, any sort of business class or talk you've ever been to would connect to this. You start with a hook. What's your personal statement? How do you draw people in? How have they shaped the person you are today? And then, because that shows the trajectory of growth that you're on. And they are now more interested in supporting you in your career because they can see how you continue to grow and change and adapt and show that growth mindset. And then another tip here that we have is not to wait to get started. You can start now. When people are looking into your essays and your portfolio and your resume, they want to see a genuine interest that usually starts now, not just later when you're looking to put something down in your portfolio. They want to see commitment and daily perseverance, and because that also shows discipline, it does, yeah, show commitment, ingenuity, and it shows that you're actually really dedicated into the things you're claiming to be dedicated to. Extracurriculars and just other people that you know, and like how you connect with people that can also boost your mental well-being, inspire your trajectory, your careers, different networking events. These are all really great ways to build not just your portfolio and your resume, but just build your own character and your own passions. And then tip number 5 here is to balance it all. They're not just looking for someone with really high grades. They want to see, again, your character. And so this shows through your extracurriculars. It also reflects more of your passions. And because once you meet the criteria, next they're looking into how do you contribute to your community. For example, when I was volunteering, I would volunteer outside of school, but also in school. I would tutor and then community connections and community outreach. And that shows kind of a more multifaceted, more developed person overall, and that's what they're looking for. But again, like we mentioned, if you don't balance it well, then it could negatively affect your mental health. And you don't want to do that. You don't want to burn out and then later have to pay the price, pay the consequences. So don't compare yourself to others. I honestly, I never thought I would genuinely get a good scholarship because I was always comparing myself to others and I felt that I was never doing enough. But actually, when you just try your best and you are balanced, you never know what could happen. You write that essay and then I got a scholarship. So as long as you just focus on your passions and your interests and do your best, you never know what could happen. It's better that way than to burn yourself out.
Awesome. Thank you, Allison. So our sixth tip for you is to get organized early. So you want to make sure that you're on top of all your deadlines. There are so many scholarships out there, and if you've done a quick Google search, you're going to find that you might be quickly overwhelmed. I certainly was when I applied for university scholarships. There are hundreds out there. Some of them are bigger, some of them are smaller. It really depends what you're looking for. And so make a list of the ones that you want to apply for, because same thing with choosing your activities. When you're choosing to apply to scholarships or choosing to apply to programs, You can get burned out really quickly if you're not intentional with what you're choosing and if you apply to too many. So definitely one of the tips we have is to use a spreadsheet, record the ones that are high priority, record the ones that are not as high priority, make sure to do those in order. Put important reminders in your phone or agenda so that you don't forget to submit the scholarship application or to submit any other applications on time, because that is definitely a reason why a lot of people don't end up getting scholarships is because they just never handed in their application. Think about criteria. So again, choose what is important to you, what is applicable to you. Filter out those scholarships that don't really matter or that you don't necessarily have an amazing shot at. Definitely try your shot at everything, but know where your limits are and don't try to do too much. And of course, prioritize. Now, if you have any questions about scholarships of any kind, make sure to ask the people who are running those scholarships or the people who are selecting for them. Don't be shy to ask questions because at the end of the day, people are people, and their job is to help you to better understand what they require out of someone who's applying. So make sure you ask right away. References, and I'll talk a little bit about this in just a sec, but make sure to contact them as early as possible because sometimes even if you might be on top of things, but your references might need more time. And it's not only important but also respectful to them and their busy schedules if you let them know that you are applying beforehand and you give them prior notice. Some programs or scholarships, especially the really big ones, they will require interviews. So things like Loran, TD, they will require, I think the TD, but they'll require interviews. Make sure you give yourself enough time to rehearse, find someone to do practice with, sort of just review your own video or ask someone to review you, see if you have good intonation, if you have good speaking pace, if you're telling your stories in a way that makes sense, all that kind of jazz. And definitely take the time to put together a couple strong applications, just so you can kind of piggyback off of those for other scholarships. So definitely don't keep things too general. Make sure you're tailoring it for specific scholarships. But just with job applications, you want to have something to work off of. And it's easier if you already have a template that you can kind of plug into different scholarships depending on what those scholarships are. Okay, number seven. So this is about the references again. And this is really key because this isn't something that you can just do in the last minute. References are going to be important for big scholarships and for admissions. And many of them, if not most of them, will require reference letters from somebody who knows you well. And so you got to read the criteria. Make sure that you understand what the scholarship is asking for, whether or not they're asking for some of your personal commitments, your leadership, some of your academic experience. Have you done anything in school that really stands out as a leader? How easy are you to work with? That kind of thing. But make sure your reference can speak to those points. And so these have to be people that you know well. It's not a must, but it's definitely much. Think about it this way. If it's somebody who knows you well writing your reference letter, that is going to sound a lot more compelling than somebody who's writing your reference letter just barely understanding who you are, and it's probably going to come off pretty generic. And so that's something you don't necessarily want to have. Think about building these relationships early. So some of the roles that we've listed down below are people you can think about who might be able to write you a scholarship or application reference letter. Teachers, your guidance counselor, anybody in your school's administration, anybody who's in a leadership role in your extracurricular activities, so supervisors and your coaches, anybody at your workplace, if you have any mentors or other community members who know you well. So there's definitely a variety of people to pick from. However, make sure you have a reference letter that genuinely uniquely speaks to you. When you have applications that require multiple reference letters, also consider diversifying who's writing those letters, and so they can speak different aspects of your personality and involvement. Just that way the admissions committee can see who you truly are as a person, and it's more well-rounded. Some references, and a lot of times, even if they know you well, they will ask for more information. So have a CV ready or have a resume ready or some sort of cheat sheet just to kind of list out what you've done in the community. Make sure to remind them it shouldn't be too generic. It should also be based on what they know about you, but also have something that they can sort of just refer back to if they need more information. Be respectful, keep in contact, make sure to provide frequent updates, ask them early, and at the end of the day, thank them for their time because they are doing you a huge favor as well.
So now we're getting into the scholar profiles. I'll be starting off first. So yeah, my name's Alison Chintia. I'm now in my second year of the Bachelor of Design in City Innovation. It's a new program the U of C started a couple of years ago in relation to architecture, essentially. I'm from Red Deer. I was born in Toronto, but I spent a big chunk of my life in Red Deer, and then I came here to Calgary. And like I mentioned before, a big kind of tip from me is that well-roundedness. So in like the portfolio, you can see there's volunteer club, peer tutoring. Those are more focused out of school. And then like youth mentorship volunteer and other fundraisers, including mental health fundraisers, food banks. You can see some kid camps that I did, and I partnered with the city. They were outside of the school. That kind of shows well-roundedness. And then even if I like to play sports and whatnot, track. And so there are camps that are related to passions that you're interested in. I also like to do art. And so again, I did an art kid camp and different volunteering things like that that connect kind of your own interests and show that you're willing to give back and be a blessing then to the community. We're blessed to be blessed, sort of thing, because that's one strong thing that they look for. And then again, of course, there is that academic component. So being able to balance shows that discipline and time management. So it's not just focus on school and grades, but also not just on sports or just on outreach, but the balance and the connectedness in between them. And so again, the tip was also mentioned before. So when you have passion for what you're doing and you impact people around you, your story kind of stands out more. And that narrative, it really is staying in the minds of those reviewing them. And it can start simple at home. I don't know how many of you know Red Deer. It's not a very like impressive place. It's not a very big city either. But you can start just around you. What are the needs? Some things I did with my friends. They were loads of fun. And it's a lot simpler sometimes than people think. People get really kind of scared and they feel daunted by the task of kind of building their portfolio and the resume and LinkedIn and all that. But it's a lot simpler sometimes than people think it is and a lot more fun as well.
Thanks, Allison. And yeah, I'd like to echo some of the points that she mentioned that um, yeah, achieving a balance is very critical and important for not only your personal health, but also just being well-rounded. Admissions committees or scholarship committees do appreciate that a lot, especially if you do emphasize that with the activities that you do highlight. So for my portfolio specifically, I think you just have to go slide back. Oh. Yeah, okay. I'm a third year biomedical sciences student here, and I went to high school at Weber Academy. In terms of some of the activities that I'm involved in, a lot of them are, again, centered around things that I'm quite passionate about. So in high school and continuing into university, one thing that I was really involved with and passionate about was student government. Just because I really enjoyed the aspect of interacting with students, but also with faculty or teachers and trying to improve engagement between the student body as well as the administration. So that's something that I've continued to this day, and currently I'm one of the elected faculty reps within the university, which has been a very meaningful experience. Another one of my passions is involved within the business side, but then also with helping others. So part of those interests and combining those interests, it motivated me to found one of the microfinance initiatives that's currently active within the U of C. And then another thing I'm passionate about is tutoring others. So giving back to marginalized students who don't have access to tutoring services, and often these tutoring services can be expensive. So part of the initiatives I'm involved in is providing free services in regarding tutoring for these students. And then yeah, other activities I'm involved in are volunteering at a seniors care facility, as well as supporting the homeless and people facing addiction. And to achieve a balance, sometimes it can get stressful when you're involved in such a wide range of activities. So to relax, I'm involved with piano, and I also swim occasionally. I also play chess, which I know it can be stressful, but to me it's relaxing. And then I also am involved in research on the side. And then my tip for everyone who's here today is that everyone you admire once stood exactly where you are now, curious, uncertain, and figuring things out. But that you shouldn't let titles or timelines intimidate you. Genuine curiosity and kindness are often all it takes to seek meaningful connections and spark meaningful connections. So I encourage you to take that message to heart, and yeah, I wish you guys all the best for your future.
Okay, so it's back to me again. Yeah, so hi, I'm Jason. I'm in the fourth year of biological sciences at the University of Calgary. Like Nikhil and Allison and Stephanie, I'm a Chancellor Scholar student. I went to my high school at Sir Winston Churchill High School in Northwest Calgary, in Brentwood. This is one of the bigger, I guess, bigger high schools in Calgary. There were like 2,000 people at the school in one time. So definitely pretty packed. It gave me a lot of exposure having so many people around me. So kind of just briefly touching on my portfolio, at least like back then, I was I was a member of the student council. I led a spelling bee as part of a small nonprofit organization, and we kind of our kind of message was to sort of be able to share science education with people that might not be able to afford it elsewhere in Calgary. I also held an executive role in lots of different clubs at my school. So I was thinking like physics club, math club, there's a whole bunch. Yeah, but generally, I really like getting involved in the school setting, and I definitely try to do as much as I could. Wasn't necessarily pursuing an executive role to begin with, but the more I got involved, the more it just made sense for me to help coordinate where I could. Currently, right now, I'm helping to support the Ambassadors Club as a co-chair and committee chair for some of the committees. So we help to do some podcasts with people around the university, and we also coordinate a holiday party for people from Woods Homes, which has been really, really fun. Some of the volunteering I do in the community, I'm currently teaching ESL to Canadian immigrants. I also lead programs for youth that focus on social and emotional learning. Peer mentorship and tutoring has also been a really big part of my life since high school, and I've been doing that consistently in various different forms. So right now I'm mentoring on campus, but before that I was mentoring as part of a club at school, teaching junior high students in various subjects, and this is especially important during COVID, when resources weren't all that common. Some of the academics I've been involved in terms of research, I've been involved in a bunch of different labs. So I've worked on artificial intelligence and machine learning in healthcare. I've worked on neuroscience. I've also worked on biomechanics, and I've also explored different social issues and barriers towards recreational care and access to recreation in general. So those are some of the research areas I've done. But as Nikhil mentioned, take some time for yourself. Don't always just focus on trying to do so much with your life that you forget about what's important to you. Do take some time for yourself. So that's what I like to do, getting involved in some athletics. So I do a bunch of racket sports. I swim, I boulder, I bike, just whatever I think of at the moment. And I also do a little bit of 3D printing on the side just as a personal hobby. Um, my tip is very, very similar to Nikhil, actually. It's probably the same tip, actually, just in like slightly different form. So I'm going to double down on this because I think it's really important. And I think Nikhil really touched on it, but I'm just going to say it again. All people are people, right? Doesn't matter whether they're like, I don't know, head of an organization or like an older student, or maybe even just your teacher, right? They're all people. And regardless of how much older they are, regardless of how accomplished they are, regardless of how far into their career they are, they still came from a place in which they were like you. They had to ask questions, they had to explore. They didn't really have any accomplishments yet, but they took the initiative and got to where they are today. And so don't be afraid to chat with those people. Don't be afraid to form connections, and to form networks, because these people, I feel like most people are there because they want to help you, and they'll recognize your passion if you just approach them and say hi and ask for their contact information. So definitely don't be afraid to network. It's a skill you're going to have to build up if you're not used to it already, but it's definitely nothing to shy away from. And ultimately, I think that it'll give you a much better return than you imagine.
Okay, so now we're moving on to some ideas for involvement. So we've all gone through our portfolios, but the table's on you now. What ideas can we share to maybe inspire you guys to pursue something on your own? side of things. Okay, so the first idea is maybe, as was mentioned by the other scholars here and myself, tutoring other students. So whether you're volunteering to tutor students with a subject that you're particularly good at, or you can join an existing organization or conduct tutoring independently as a private tutor. The tutoring can also be done in a virtual setting or in person. Depends, what age or level you're comfortable with teaching. All these factors you can consider, and it's something to reflect on if that would be suitable for you. Okay. And yeah, okay. The next one is you can coach others in a sport or hobby. So, this is a great way to share your passion with others, especially if it's a sport or hobby that you're particularly interested in. You can look into hosting online or virtual classes and volunteer your time within the community to help spread your passion for the sport or hobby.
Then another idea are contests and organized programs. So some listed here are academic contests, high school, and summer research programs. There's these listed. They do have a lot of STEM related ones, but also some that are like women specific or specific to certain like groups that aren't as prominent in different fields, including business. So keep an eye out, look online, and some high schools partner. So there was one that was I did that was ran by U of A, I think. And so we were at U of A for part of the summer for it. So just keep an eye out, talk to your teachers. Youth volunteer organizations, there's loads of them everywhere, again, connected to like there's some listed here, Youth Central, public libraries, but also some schools, even they'll mention here and there. Different events, sports teams, coding camps, music, theater, again, tapping into kind of your interests and see which ones that you can show that like your passion, but also your skills and your motivations. If it's something you're good at, make a point to pursue it, be intentional.
Another one you could potentially consider is raising money for a good cause, especially if you're doing this for an organization that you have passion for or you have a personal connection with. If you think that this is something that you'd like to do that really benefits your community, I feel like you'd be surprised even the smallest donations can have a huge impact. So there's definitely no need to go out there thinking that you're going to raise a ton of money that's going to make a huge impact to these organizations. You probably will, but it doesn't require all that much. A lot of times, your effort in starting that initiative is going to be what really counts. So some ideas that you can think about for this would be to host a coat drive and then think about other areas that are needed. So whether it's something involved in terms of sports, disabilities, supporting refugee students, anything like that. These are all just random ideas, and everybody is going to have I guess, a little bit of a different history. And so think about something that you could help with. One other thing on top of this is that one thing to sort of note in general is the idea of entrepreneurial thinking. Try to think of areas in your application. So when you're intentionally targeting some of these activities, try to think of areas that are unmet and areas in which you can sort of showcase your creativity. If you can identify a solution or create a solution for something that doesn't really have one yet, that's going to be really impactful. And I also personally think it's going to teach you a lot about yourself and help you to mature as an applicant. With that being said, I do think I need to put this out there. A lot of individuals might try to choose activities that are focused a lot on leadership, or have that in their name just because the idea that if you are a leader, you are somebody who's making an impact. I would caution against that. I would caution against that because I feel like if you feel strongly enough about an activity, anything such as leadership or having some sort of supervisory role is going to come to you naturally. And if you do enough for an organization or you do enough for a cause, you're going to find ways to be more involved. And that thing is going and becoming somebody who's deeply involved in an organization with a lot of responsibility is going to be organic. I don't think there's necessarily a need to go out and specifically search for leadership specific roles that you don't necessarily feel strongly about. Because an application, in my opinion, an application that reads very passionately, even if it wasn't in a leadership position, feels a lot more genuine and it feels a lot more like I'm reading a genuine person, and this is somebody who knows what they're doing compared to somebody who just picked up leadership positions left and right just to kind of fill out their portfolio. So that's my biggest tip with regards to the entrepreneurial thinking. So find a way to strike a balance between those two, and then I think you're going to be in a good position. Okay, yeah. So now it's the Q&A session. So we've sort of said our piece and we've provided some information for you all. Hopefully that helped. If you have any questions about that or you have any questions for us specifically, please feel free to drop them in the chat and we're going to get to them as soon as we can. And they could be for either one of us or they could be for all of us. So feel free to ask away. So we just got a question. Just got a question about, so the question goes, are there any compiled scholarship lists that students could use as a starting point? There definitely are. There's lots of different sources that you can find on Google. I think Scholarships Canada is a really good list that you can check out, and it's going to have a lot of different scholarships that you may be eligible for. You can input your own criteria, and then they'll kind of find scholarships that work for you. Another database to look at is called Youth Central, and they also have a list of scholarships that you could start with. But there's definitely lots of databases online.
And those are all great. But if you haven't already applied for this year of school, if you're going into another year, definitely do not skip. I know so many people who have the scholarship application. That's just from the University of Calgary because what you do is you just put in all your information, you put in your grades and everything, and there's some essay questions. Take the time, fill those out well, because it automatically will sort you through their entire database to find which scholarships you might be eligible for. And if you whatever school you get accepted into, they often have like reoccurring scholarships. So don't forget in your second and third years to keep applying for those. That'll just be under your student portal and not to forget about them. And same with those databases that Jason mentioned. There are a lot of scholarships online that are also for returning students. So it's not just a first year thing, even if you don't get anything right away.
There's another question just regarding some of the renewal criteria. So this person asked if you need to keep getting higher grades in order to keep your scholarship within the U of C. Just to answer your question, each scholarship has like different criteria listed on the U of C website, and I'd encourage you to visit that. But they each have different renewal criteria, and it'll clearly state if there's a GPA that you have to meet each year or if you have to submit a list of extracurricular activities or an associated CV along with everything you've done throughout the year. So it varies by scholarship as well as those thresholds, as well as sometimes I believe there's a minimum number of courses that you have to or units that you have to complete. So the requirements vary, but for the Chancellor, I believe it's around a 3.6. I could be wrong, but GPA wise, it's a 3.6, and we have to submit activities each year of how we're helping support the community or our community related initiatives. So.
Yeah, I think generally the amount that they're giving you kind of corresponds with how much they ask of you. So, like a high, at least this would be a prestige scholarship, so they want you to be putting in more time. But yeah, some smaller, simpler ones could be just a one-time entry thing.
Okay, we have a question that says, can you tell us more about your leadership roles at the school and how one gets in? So maybe each scholar can talk a little bit about some of the leadership work that you're doing at U of C or maybe in the community as well.
Okay, I can start, I guess. So at the university, I am part of within this club that we run. We have different committees, so some leadership roles there on the committees that we run. But also faculties often have their own clubs and whatnot. So there's one that's associated with my architecture faculty, and I help. I'm one of the kind of student reps. And also for that specific club where we focus on student life a little bit more and networking events and whatnot. Those would be kind of leaderships I pursue there. And it kind of continued on from high school. I helped start a tutoring program. So it's just kind of naturally continuing working in the school. And then outside of school, I did do a tutoring thing until my schedule got too intense. And then I had to step down from that. But again, just where your skills are, where your interests are, where your classes.
Yeah, I can share some of mine as well. So, as I mentioned earlier in my portfolio, I currently help to co-chair the Chancellor's Ambassadors Club. And there's a bunch of different committees, so I sort of just oversee that and then relay any scholar concerns to the Office of the Chancellor and Senate, basically the people who helped to give us our scholarship. And then I kind of just help to organize some of the events, send out memos, etc. So that's sort of a leadership and organizational role that I have. Within the specific committees, I also hold two leadership roles as part of the social, not the social, the podcast committee, as well as the Woods Homes Holiday Party Committee. And as I described earlier, these are just really involved community focused events that help to sort of bring the energy of the scholars for a good cause. And also on campus right now, in terms of just strictly leadership, I'm also an exec in the badminton club. And it wasn't necessarily something I just chased after intentionally. It just happened because I love badminton so much. And eventually I just got interested in helping to coordinate some of their events and helping out a bit further. And it just felt natural for me. So yeah, those are some of the leadership roles that I hold on campus currently.
Yeah, I can go next. So, yeah, a lot of it was covered in my portfolio before, but the main one that's consuming most of my time is my elected position within the university. So, for this position, you just had to participate in the general election that the university hosts each year, and the number of seats that they allocate depends on the faculty and is proportional to the number of students within the faculty. But as part of the position, you interact with a lot of like the deans associated within your department, as well as other student organizations to help address student concerns directly with the deans and improve student life, as well as engagement with events that are hosted around the department, as well as communicating with the wider students' union body for issues pertaining to your specific faculty. But apart from that, I also as mentioned previously, I'm involved in a lot of nonprofit organizations with varying mission statements, ranging from the community-oriented microfinance side to peer tutoring. And then I'm also, as a swimmer, I do help coach younger kids for getting involved with swimming, as well as some of the basic life skills that some people want to pursue becoming a lifeguard later. So those can be very helpful for younger kids. And yeah.
Great. Thank you all for sharing your experiences. We're so fortunate to have our three scholars here who are really just testament to the fact that there's so many ways to get involved. And, as long as you're passionate about what you're doing, you really can make a difference and grow a lot in the process. So our next question uh, is, I'm currently studying in grade 10 in Saudi Arabia, and I'm transferring to a high school in Calgary for my junior year. Will I be considered an international student when I apply to UCalgary?
Yeah, that's a great question. That entirely depends on your status in Canada. If you're transferring as an international student, and by the time that you apply to university, if you're still an international student and haven't received your permanent residency or your citizenship, then you'd be considered an international student. And that's a very common phenomenon. We do have a lot of like international students who are living in Canada who then attend UCalgary. So yeah, that depends on your status in Canada.
But I would definitely recommend to book a meeting. There's a lot of student advisors, and on the website, there are specific advisors for international students. So if I were you, you can just do a Zoom call, something like that, book an appointment, and then get those details ironed out.
And their second question is they have been volunteering as a media manager at their local animal shelter. for about a year, but they know that they should volunteer in Calgary in grade 11 and grade 10. So will their current volunteering count? I believe it
Depends on,
will. Yeah.
yes, it will. Yeah. I think that's like the easiest answer. And if anything, I would say like if you have any international volunteering experience, I myself am an international student and I had a lot of volunteering experience in my home country, and that was considered when like I applied for scholarships and stuff. So yeah, if anything, that adds more value to it because it's like, it's from a different world and you still volunteered there. So yeah, that's cool to have.
Yeah, so there's one more question that's asking about extra time in terms of volunteering and grades. Oof, big question. All right, so this is definitely one that we all struggle with, and entering university, everybody struggles with, right? I think that it's important to understand that keeping a balance is difficult, and it's honestly more of an acquired skill, if anything. University is not the same as high school, and I feel like depending on which high school you went to, it may be an easier transition, or whether or not you did something like IB or AP. It could be an easier transition for you, but it's never going to be a total smooth transition. So one thing to keep in mind, as we mentioned earlier, is just not to do too much at the same time. There are some things you may have to let go of. Like for me, I had to let go of a lot of my high school experiences when I transitioned to university, just because it didn't make any more sense for me to continue those, given the fact that my time was cut short, and I really wanted to focus on my time on some specific activities that I cared a lot about and I wanted to make meaningful. And so my biggest advice for that is to figure out what is really important to you. Know what you can let go and know what you can't let go. Have it, talk it out, right? Like have a discussion with somebody, even if they're not like in the same position as you. Like talking it out can help you sort of figure out what's important for you. Because university's hard. It's hard to get good grades. And it's definitely something that you should keep prioritizing. But at the same time, you need to have a balance with other activities. And so yeah, like I would just say like it's something you'll get used to. It's gonna be rough. It's gonna be rough at the very beginning. Just try to like see what you have to prioritize for yourself. And don't do too much. Do enough, but don't do so much that you'll get stretched thin and you can't put enough energy and time into anywhere.
And all that to say, I'd also say if when you have friends and those things you either volunteer with or in your classes or whatnot, or other just like high achieving students, when you do these things together, I find it's a lot like yeah, I'm doing my homework, but I'm also kind of chatting on the side. Like it's also I kind of get relaxed and it's kind of a break, a socializing break. So definitely don't let go of like don't just like if I like honestly if I had to choose between some of my and tutoring and whatnot over socializing, I would make sure not to drop socializing completely because you will definitely burn out if you do. If you drop that and say, oh, that it's like it's not really that important. Who cares? It's not going on my portfolio that I'm socializing. But then you burn out and it's also a lot less fun and then you hate your life and then you don't do as good of a job at school, you don't do as good of a job in the extracurriculars, you don't have that interest, the passion, the energy because you're not well rested, because you're not doing well, you're not taking care of yourself and your mental health. So I find that just partnering with that's another good thing about Chancellor Scholars or a lot of other scholarships where they have communities that you can find of other like high achieving people and find people who have the same goals but can help you partner and succeed in what you're trying to do.
Great. We have one question that says, how can I find what I'm passionate about? So maybe our scholars can talk a bit about how you reflected on your own values and your passions and what led you to do some of the work that you're involved in.
Yeah, yeah,
How
I
you
can
go for
answer
that?
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's kind of a trial and error, right? Like, when you're entering high school or when you're entering college, you have so many opportunities available. And for me, when I was going through the journey, I initially started by getting myself involved with like a ton of different things and networking with a lot of people because I wasn't sure myself what I was passionate about or wanted to get involved with. And by through these interactions and talking with people, you get a better sense of what makes you happy to participate in. What would you actually like to spend your time dedicated to? And for me, it was in regards to student government was a huge part of things, especially through the events that I engaged with and seeing like how could I myself make an impact within the organization was a big thing to consider. So it's a tough question to answer because it's really subjective and it depends on your personal background and experience. But I'd suggest initially when starting out to get involved, dip your toes into a ton of different activities because you can start refining your focus once you get a better sense of, what doesn't really vibe well with me, what does vibe well, and from there you can proceed. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll add something to that as well. I think so Nikhil, I completely agree with you. I think it's a lot of it is like you'll test things out because honestly, going to university is a really good way to explore your passions. There's probably going to be clubs on campus and different activities you never even realized were a thing to begin with. Like there's a cheese club on campus apparently. Like I noticed that. I was like, that's amazing. I love cheese. Never would have thought that was a thing in my high school, right? But different activities on campus. Give them a try. And the other thing is also don't think too hard about it. Like think about what you do on your downtime. Some people some people they might just pick up a book and read. And if you love reading, maybe you can think about a way to sort of bring that to other communities in Calgary, like other students, right? Ones who may not have as easy access to libraries and just books in general, free books in general. So maybe you can think something about that. I don't know, like if you're passionate about video games, maybe there's a way to sort of start up a club in which you can bring the community together, discuss your favorite games, see if you can, form those meaningful connections with younger children or with people that are your age or your peers. There's definitely different ways to think of good causes for activities. And just because we say like, oh, it's casual, it's kind of like meaningless, doesn't necessarily mean that it's a bad activity. It's if you feel strongly about it and you love doing it, there's definitely ways to sort of expand that into meaningful projects. So it would help too to be sort of introspective and just kind of reflect on what do you currently do when you have free time and you have nothing else going on, right? Like even if you just love to call a friend and just chat with them, like think about ways you can like bring more socialization opportunities to different groups in Calgary. It's just these are just broad ideas and not necessarily stuff you should follow, but um, start simple and start with what's like genuine to you. You don't need to force yourself into a mold, right? Because you already here, you are probably like at least, I don't know, like 15, 16 years in the making, and you've definitely developed a personality and things that you love. So focus on those, and also take the time to explore, just as Nikhil said.
Okay, so last call. Any more questions, please type them in the chat and we'll answer them. Otherwise, there will also be an email sent out for who won the raffle, and the slideshow will be also sent out in the recording. Really appreciate all you guys coming out to take a look.
Someone says, do students have a chance to do co-op programs at U of C? Does anyone have any experience with co-ops that they could speak on?
I don't specifically, maybe Nikhil or Allison, you'd be like more qualified to answer this, but I'm just going to share my thoughts right now. I think depending on your program, they may offer co-op opportunities, and there's definitely other internship opportunities that you can search for on your own. Like I know that there's something called the Science Internship Program, in the Faculty of Science, and this is open to sort of like all students who are in science, even if your degree does not require it explicitly. Does anybody else have any more insight into this?
I personally don't have a co-op, but I have friends who are in engineering who do, and it's embedded in their degree. So some will be embedded, some aren't. U of C does put an emphasis on study abroad. I think they say they aimed for around like 50% of students to have some sort of study abroad experience. I have friends in the architecture program that just for like extra, like your elective credits, they just take other study abroads for here and there. So yeah, so co-ops, internships, study abroad, it's like that balance between like industry life experience and school experience. But yeah, I think they have would have more industry connections in Calgary depending on what your um, faculty and what kind of area you're looking into.
Yeah, I can also add a bit to this. I do also have friends within like engineering and computer science that also have that integrated co-op system. As I'm in biomedical sciences, it's our system doesn't necessarily work that way, but we do have a lot of research involvement within our faculty. They do highly encourage it, especially as U of C is growing rapidly and is one of the most research intensive universities in the country. So they do offer a lot of summer research internship positions and fundings that are available for students to apply for through our centralized studentship application portal. And yeah, the research can range from a wide variety of things. You know, people from business or arts can even apply for a studentship throughout the summer, which you can choose if you want to do it for 16 weeks, 8 weeks, or 12 weeks. So in that way, you can tailor the program to your schedule and needs. But in terms, if you're looking for other parts of the co-op program pertaining to engineering or computer science, I'd suggest maybe speaking to someone who's within that major at the UC.
We do have um, two more questions. These will be the final questions that we'll be addressing today. But first one, what is research and how do I join? I've always wondered that. Nikhil, you were just talking about research, so maybe you can talk a little about your
Yeah.
experience.
Yeah. So research, it's basically related to academia and trying to deeply investigate a particular uh, topic. It could be scientific, it could be again within like finance, any area really. And in terms of getting involved, there's a different approaches you can take for this. I've heard of cold emailing, which is, mass emailing professors to see if one will take you. But usually it has low success rates. I'd suggest trying to write a sincere email to something that you're genuinely interested about. The research, down the line, if you're actually interested about it and do good work, could lead to presentation at conferences, either nationally or internationally, or publication opportunities. So you want to help establish a good rapport with whoever you work with and be genuinely interested with that. But there's also tons of other research seminars that can help explain different opportunities that are available and how to get involved. I'm sure the other scholars have inputs too regarding this.
Yeah, I know Jason was typing an answer, if you wanted to add anything.
Sure, yeah. I was typing and then I was like, no, I'll just say it. So basically you asked the question, what is research? If you don't know, if you're not familiar with like academia in general, basically universities are set up in a way in which the people who teach you your classes, like your professors, who basically like are the same role as like your teachers in high school. They not only teach you classes to help you learn more information, that's part of their job, but a lot of times what they're hired for is to conduct investigations into some real world issues that exist like just in science, in social topics, or like literally anything. Um, and the university is this giant place to sort of conduct all of that, what we call research. And so this isn't stuff that you learn just, in your classes or on your textbook, because those all come from research that has been done. And somebody asked the question, it was like, okay, hey, I don't know, like I'm in biological sciences, so I'm going to use this example, but how does evolution happen? How does that work? And then somebody researched gene transfer, somebody researched mutations. And so somebody did the work into that. And usually as an undergraduate student, if you want to do that kind of work or you want to tackle some sort of topic that you have a passion for, it could be anything like engineering, social sciences, inequities, politics, like there's research in every single aspect that you can think of. If you want to tackle that as an undergraduate student, usually what you'll end up doing, if you follow like what Nikhil said and reach out to a faculty member, you're going to be working under somebody who's experienced in that area, who's done a lot of research and led a lot of research on their own, and they'll be able to provide you guidance on how you can get involved. Most of the time, it's through summer research opportunities. So you'll spend your summers working in a lab and looking at these topics, and you're going to be assigned different roles that will help you to sort of get involved and get your foot in the door. If you continue on with that, maybe eventually you'll get publications, you'll be able to deliver presentations and go to conferences outside of the school as well. And so it depends how much you plan to get involved with it, but it's definitely a core part of the university. And it's honestly like to some extent is why universities across the world exist to begin with. So definitely very broad topics to explore if you want to get involved in research. I highly recommend it. I think it's a good way to get started if you're looking to do something over the summer. But there's a lot of different things that you could try. So just take the time to explore, look on websites, look at different professors' profiles.
Yep. I'll also add in, so I'm part of the architecture faculty, and we also have our summer research programs and whatnot. And some students can do from home. So like some people who presented last this year from last summer, they went home to say Vancouver, they did their studies, and then they came here and presented their information. Some are paid, some are not, depending on who's sponsoring the organization. When you partner with your professor, they usually will help you do your application and apply for all that and apply for the grants because there's several grants you'll be trying to get. And then, yeah, of course, is a very important part. But you might not think that there's a research opportunity, but there's often you presenting this is an idea I want to research, and then partner with professors who sometimes have experience and whatnot. That is also a possibility. Other than emailing, sometimes there are networking events or events hosted by professors, or like you can ask your TA, sometimes like your teacher's assistant. Some smaller classes, like I would just go after class and talk to my professor and like, hey, this is something I'm passionate. This is something I saw you had on your little info, your little bio, blah, 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 blah. So it's more accessible than you think.
Okay, those are all the questions that we have time for today, but thank you to everyone for coming out to our presentation today. We really hope it was helpful and that you learned something meaningful and that you can apply in building your own portfolios and exploring your academic opportunities. And huge thanks to Nikhil, Allison, and Jason who've taken the time to share their amazing experiences with us today. I will put in the chat our email which you can write to us at if you have any further questions about applying to university or building your portfolio or anything. But yeah, thank you all and have a good night.